Hello friends. Today, we are going to dive into a realm that will challenge everything you thought you knew about reality, logic, and consciousness. In this video, I will explore the Iceberg of Paradoxes, a collection of philosophical and scientific enigmas that unveil the most profound and sometimes unsettling aspects of our perception of the world. Each paradox in this iceberg is like a layer, hiding increasingly strange and difficult ideas beneath the surface. We will start with the most well-known and accessible concepts, but as we progress through the levels, we will delve deeper into mysticism, existential questions, and philosophical traps that may compel you to rethink the foundations of how we understand consciousness, reality, and even life itself. Level 1. The tip of the iceberg. The Infinite Monkey Theorem. The Infinite Monkey Theorem is a captivating thought experiment that illustrates the concepts of probability and infinity. According to this theorem, if a monkey were to randomly type on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time, it would almost certainly produce any given text, whether it be the complete works of William Shakespeare or a detailed account of your life. Moreover, such a monkey would eventually reproduce any possible finite text an infinite number of times. This paradox highlights that, with an infinite number of attempts, any event with a non-zero probability will eventually occur. However, if we consider a finite number of monkeys over a limited time, the probability of them randomly typing even a small part of a work becomes nearly zero. For example, the probability that a monkey types the first letter of Hamlet correctly is 1 in 26. For the first two letters, it decreases to 1 in 676, 26 multiplied by 26. Hence, the probability of correctly typing the first 20 letters is 1 in 26 to the power of 20, which is approximately 1 in 19 quintillion. The complete text of Hamlet consists of around 130,000 characters, and the probability of a monkey typing it correctly is astronomically high. So much so that it becomes nearly incomprehensible. Even if every particle in the universe were a monkey typing continuously since the Big Bang, the likelihood that at least one would type Hamlet remains infinitesimally small. Estimates suggest that achieving a success probability of at least 1 in a trillion would require 10 Nobars Sigats 60 observable universes filled with typing monkeys. Thus, while theoretically an infinite number of monkeys typing indefinitely could reproduce any text, in practice, due to the physical limitations of our universe, this is virtually impossible. This paradox serves as a vivid illustration of the distinction between mathematical theory and reality. The Trolley Problem. The Trolley Problem is a series of thought experiments in ethics and psychology that examines the justification of sacrificing one life to save many. First formulated by English philosopher Philip of Foot in 1967, this dilemma presents us with complex moral choices. The classic scenario is as follows. Picture a runaway trolley speeding down a track. 5 people are tied to the track and cannot free themselves. You stand next to a lever that can divert the trolley onto another track. Where one person is tied down, you have two options: do nothing, allowing the trolley to continue on its current path and kill the 5 people, or pull the lever, redirecting the trolley to kill one person instead. Variations of the dilemma include scenarios where, instead of pulling a lever, you could push a large person off a bridge to stop the trolley and save the 5. These variations underscore the difference between direct action and indirect intervention. Ethical theories provide differing approaches to resolving this issue. Utilitarianism argues that one should choose actions that yield the greatest good for the greatest number, thus supporting the sacrifice of one to save 5. Deontology focuses on moral duties and rules, perhaps deeming it unacceptable to actively cause harm, even for the sake of saving others. Your opinion on how to act in such a situation may reflect your personal values and beliefs. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe it is more ethical to sacrifice one to save many, or to abstain from intervention thereby avoiding direct responsibility for someone's death. The prisoner's dilemma. One of the most famous paradoxes in game theory. The prisoner's dilemma illustrates the conflicts between individual rationality and collective good. First formulated in 1950 by Merrill Flood and Melvin Drescher, it demonstrates how two rational individuals may fail to cooperate, even if it is in their best interest. Imagine two accomplices arrested and held in separate interrogation rooms. There is not enough evidence for serious charges, so each is offered a deal. If one testifies against the other, while the other remains silent, the betrayer goes free, while the silent accomplice receives 3 years in prison. If both remain silent, each gets 1 year for a minor crime. If both betray each other, each receives 2 years. Rational players, aiming to minimize their sentences, will conclude that betrayal is the better option, regardless of the partner's actions. However, if both betray, they end up with 2 years each, when they could have received only 1 year had they both chosen to remain silent. This paradox shows that individual rationality can lead to worse collective outcomes. The prisoner's dilemma can be seen in various areas, such as companies deciding whether to lower prices or maintain them at a higher level, or nations choosing between arms races and disarmament. Numerous experiments have shown that people often tend toward cooperation, even when it would be rational to betray. This suggests that human behavior does not always align with the assumptions of rational choice theory. The prisoner's dilemma highlights the complexity of decision-making, emphasizing the conflict between personal interests and the common good. The Library of Babel. This metaphorical universe was envisioned by Jorge Luis Borges, where every possible combination of characters on 410 pages is represented in the form of a book. Borges, an Argentine writer known for his philosophical and metaphysical works, delves into complex concepts like infinity, knowledge, and reality. One of his most famous stories, The Library of Babel, published in 1941, describes a hypothetical universe in the form of an infinite library made up of countless hexagonal rooms, each filled with books. Every book contains a unique combination of 25 symbols, 22 letters, a comma, a period, and a space. As a result, the library consists of every possible combination of these symbols, encompassing everything from coherent works to complete nonsense. Borges uses the image of the library as a symbol of infinity and the incomprehensibility of the universe. He considers it a colossal repository of priceless knowledge, which is also a place of forgetting. Borges' story raises questions about the nature of information, randomness, and the search for meaning in a chaotic world. It has inspired countless philosophical and literary discussions, becoming a classic example of speculative literature that pushes the boundaries of human understanding. Hilbert's Hotel. This thought experiment, proposed by German mathematician David Hilbert in 1924, illustrates the counterintuitive properties of infinite sets and demonstrates how a hotel with an infinite number of occupied rooms can still accommodate new guests, even when all rooms are full. Imagine a hotel with rooms numbered 1, 2, 3, and so on to infinity, where each room is occupied. When a new guest arrives, despite the full occupancy, they can be accommodated by asking each current guest to move to the room with the next higher number. The guest in room 1 moves to room 2, the guest in room 2 moves to room 3, and so forth. As a result, room 1 is freed up for the new guest. This paradox demonstrates that infinite sets can have unexpected properties, such as the ability to make room for new elements without having to remove existing ones. It also emphasizes the distinction between countably infinite sets, like the natural numbers, and uncountably infinite sets, like the set of real numbers between 0 and 1, with the latter having a greater cardinality. Hilbert's paradox challenges our intuitive understanding of size and capacity, illustrating how infinity can contradict common sense, and opening new horizons in the understanding of mathematical concepts. Level 2. Beneath the surface. The Ross-Littlewood paradox, also known as the problem of balls and vases, this thought experiment illustrates the paradoxical properties of infinities and the concept of supertasks. First described by mathematician John Littlewood in 1953, this paradox shows how intuitive notions of infinity can lead to counterintuitive results. The scenario of the paradox goes like this. At noon, a vase is filled with balls numbered from 1 to 10, after which ball number 1 is removed. After 30 minutes, half of the remaining time, balls numbered 11 to 20 are added, and ball number 2 is removed. After 15 minutes, again half of the remaining time, balls numbered 21 to 30 are added, and ball number 3 is removed. This process continues, with each step adding 10 new balls and removing the ball corresponding to the step number, with each step taking half the time of the previous one. Thus, by noon, an infinite number of steps are completed. The question arises, how many balls remain in the vase by noon? Intuitively, it may seem that the number of balls in the vase will be infinite, since more balls are added at each step than removed. However, upon closer examination, it becomes evident that each ball placed in the vase will eventually be removed at some step. For example, ball number 1 is removed at the first step, ball number 2 at the second, and so forth. Consequently, by noon, there will be no balls left in the vase. This paradox underscores the complexities of dealing with infinite processes and demonstrates how our intuitive notions can be misleading when considering infinity. It also highlights the concept of supertasks, processes involving the completion of an infinite number of operations in finite time. Littlewood's paradox serves as a vivid example of how infinite processes can lead to unexpected and counterintuitive outcomes, challenging our traditional understandings of mathematics and logic. Fermi's paradox. Fermi's paradox presents a seemingly contradictory situation between the high probability of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations in the universe and the lack of observable evidence for their existence. Named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who in 1950, while discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial life, famously asked, "Where is everybody?" The essence of the paradox lies in the fact that given the vast number of stars in our galaxy and the likelihood of habitable planets, one would expect numerous advanced civilizations to exist. However, convincing evidence of their presence or activity is still lacking. There are several hypotheses attempting to explain this paradox. The rare Earth hypothesis suggests that the conditions necessary for complex life to arise are extremely rare, and Earth is an exception. The Great Filter posits that there is a stage in the development of advanced civilizations that is highly unlikely to be crossed, rendering them rare. The self-destruction hypothesis suggests that technologically advanced civilizations tend to self-destruct before they can make contact with others. The zoo hypothesis posits that extraterrestrial civilizations are observing Earth, but consciously avoiding contact to not interfere with our natural development. The simulation hypothesis suggests that we may be living in a simulated reality created by more advanced civilizations, and the lack of contact with other extraterrestrial civilizations is due to them not being part of the simulation. Fermi's paradox continues to be a topic of discussion and research, raising questions about the likelihood of life existing in the universe and why we have yet to find clear signs of extraterrestrial civilizations. The Toxin Puzzle, this thought experiment, proposed by philosopher Gregory Kavka in 1983, explores the nature of intentions and rationality in decision-making. Imagine that an eccentric billionaire offers you a deal. You will receive $1 million if by midnight you form the intention to drink a harmless toxin that will cause you minor discomfort the next day. Importantly, you do not actually need to drink the toxin. Merely intending to do so suffices. From a rational standpoint, it seems simple enough to say you intend to drink the toxin, especially since there are no consequences if you actually do. However, the paradox lies in the fact that if you do not genuinely intend to drink it, then you will not receive the reward. This thought experiment raises questions about the relationship between intentions and rationality. Is it rational to form an intention that you know you will not fulfill, even if it leads to a desired outcome? The Toxin Puzzle is often utilized in discussions about decision theory, the nature of intentions, and the challenges of incorporating intentions into models of rational decision-making. The Ship of Theseus. This philosophical thought experiment investigates the question of identity and change over time. According to ancient Greek mythology, the Ship of Theseus was preserved by regularly replacing its worn-out parts with new ones. Over time, all of the original components were replaced. This raises the question, does the Ship of Theseus remain the same after all of its parts have been replaced? Furthermore, another dilemma arises. If all of the original parts are gathered and used to construct a new ship, which of the two is the true Ship of Theseus? This paradox stimulates philosophical reflection on the nature of objects, their identity, and the changes they undergo over time. Various philosophical schools offer their interpretations, linking identity to the structure's continuity or the material from which the object is made. Buridan's ass. This paradox is attributed to the 14th century French philosopher Jean Buridan, although its roots trace back to Aristotle. In his treatise on the heavens, Aristotle ridicules the sophistic notion of the Earth's immobility by comparing it to a situation where a person, equally hungry and thirsty, stands between food and drink until they die of hunger and thirst. The essence of the paradox is this: an ass, placed at equal distance between two identical bales of hay, is unable to choose between them and ultimately perishes from starvation. This thought experiment illustrates the decision-making problem in conditions of perfect symmetry between options and calls into question the concept of free will. Although Buridan likely did not use this example in his writings, the paradox became associated with his name. The Buridan's ass phenomenon has come to represent a human's indecision when faced with two equally appealing choices. Schrödinger's cat. This thought experiment was proposed by Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger in 1935. It illustrates the counterintuitive aspects of quantum mechanics, particularly the concept of superposition. A cat is placed in a sealed box along with a radioactive atom, a Geiger counter, a vial of poison, and a hammer. If the Geiger counter detects radioactivity, it triggers the hammer to break the vial of poison, killing the cat. If no decay occurs, the cat remains alive. According to quantum mechanics, until the box is opened and an observation is made, the cat exists in a superposition of states, being both alive and dead simultaneously. Upon opening the box and making an observation, the system collapses into one of the possible states. The cat is either alive or dead. This experiment highlights the paradoxes associated with applying quantum principles to macroscopic objects and raises questions about the role of the observer in quantum mechanics and the nature of reality at the quantum level. Newcomb's paradox. This thought experiment, proposed by physicist William Newcomb in 1960, challenges our intuitive understanding of rationality and free will. The scenario involves a player and a predictor who can accurately foresee the future. There are two boxes. Box A, which is transparent and contains $1,000, and Box B, which is opaque and may contain either 1 million or nothing. The rules of the game are as follows. The player can choose either only Box B or both Box A and B. The predictor makes a forecast regarding the player's choice. If the predictor anticipates that the player will choose both boxes, they leave Box B empty. If they predict that the player will choose only Box B, they place $1 million in it. Thus, regardless of the prediction, Choosing both boxes guarantees an additional $1,000 from box A. Trusting the predictor's accuracy, opting for only box B will yield $1 million, while choosing both boxes will only net $1,000. This paradox raises questions about rationality, free will, and cause and effect relationships, sparking debates among philosophers and decision theory specialists. Level 3. Below the surface. Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. This esoteric novella by Edwin A. Abbott, published in 1884, serves as a mathematical and philosophical exploration of the concept of dimensions, also providing social commentary on Victorian society. The story is set in a two-dimensional world called Flatland, inhabited by geometric figures. The narrator is a square, representing the middle class. Residents of Flatland are divided into various classes based on their shapes. Triangles are the lower class, squares and pentagons are the middle class professionals, and hexagons and above represent the upper class nobility. Women are represented as straight lines and occupy subordinate positions in society. The social hierarchy is strictly defined, and advancement is possible only through offspring with an increasing number of sides. The protagonist, the square, learns about the existence of a third dimension when he encounters a sphere, a being from the three-dimensional world. The sphere introduces the square to the concept of three dimensions, showing him worlds with different dimensionalities, including Lineland, a one-dimensional world of lines, and Pointland, a zero-dimensional world of points. The square's attempts to explain the concept of three dimensions to the other inhabitants of Flatland lead to social and philosophical problems, as the idea of dimensions beyond their understanding meets with resistance and skepticism. Ultimately, the square faces persecution for his beliefs. Flatland is not just a mathematical allegory, it also comments on social and gender issues of the Victorian era. Abbott uses the limitations of the two-dimensional world to explore broader themes of perception, knowledge, and societal constraints, prompting readers to consider the existence of dimensions and worlds beyond their comprehension. The brain in a vat. This philosophical concept examines the nature of reality and perception. In this hypothetical scenario, a person's brain is removed from their body, placed in a special vat filled with a nutrient solution, and connected to a computer that generates artificial sensory signals. As a result, the brain perceives a simulated reality, believing it to be genuine. This experiment raises fundamental questions about the validity of our sensations and challenges our understanding of the external world. It serves as a foundation for discussions on solipsism, skepticism regarding the existence of objective reality, and the possibility that our perceptions may be the result of artificial simulation. Determinism. Determinism is a philosophical concept that asserts that all events are predetermined by preceding conditions and natural laws. According to this perspective, having complete knowledge of current conditions and the laws of nature would allow one to accurately predict all future events. Causal determinism emphasizes that every event is a consequence of previous events and natural laws, excluding the role of randomness or chance. This implies that everything occurring in the world is already predetermined and inevitable. Logical determinism is based on fixed and stable meanings of statements, suggesting that the future is inevitable since all statements about the future are already true or false. Theological determinism posits that divine intervention shapes all events according to a divine plan. Biological determinism claims that human behavior, including psychological traits, is predominantly determined by biological factors such as genetics and neurochemistry. This implies that from birth, our actions are predetermined by our biology. Determinism raises numerous debates, particularly regarding the concept of free will. If all events are fully determined, the question arises, is there such a thing as genuine free will, Or are our choices predetermined by conditions beyond our control? Some philosophers, known as compatibilists, argue that determinism and free will can coexist, asserting that free will lies in the capacity to act according to one's desires and intentions, even if those desires and intentions are determined. Others, termed incompatibilists, argue that if determinism is true, genuine free will is impossible. Boltzmann's brain. This hypothetical scenario, proposed in theoretical physics and cosmology, challenges our understanding of reality and the origins of consciousness. Named after Austrian physicist Ludwig Boltzmann. The idea is based on the principles of statistical mechanics and thermodynamics. According to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, a measure of disorder in a system, tends to increase over time. However, in an infinite universe, rare fluctuations can occur, temporarily reducing entropy in certain regions, leading to the emergence of highly organized structures. Boltzmann suggested that our ordered universe could have arisen as a result of such fluctuations. Expanding on this idea, the Boltzmann brain concept posits that, on an infinite timescale, spontaneous fluctuations could create a self-aware brain, fully formed and possessing false memories, existing in a real world. This leads to a philosophical paradox. If such Boltzmann brains are statistically more probable than evolved conscious beings, can we be such randomly generated consciousnesses rather than products of a lengthy evolutionary process? The twin paradox. The twin paradox, based on Einstein's theory of special relativity, is a thought experiment illustrating the effect of time dilation. In this scenario, one of two identical twins remains on Earth, while the other embarks on a space journey at a speed close to the speed of light. According to special relativity, time passes more slowly for a moving object relative to a stationary observer. This phenomenon, known as time dilation, means that when the traveling twin returns to Earth, they will be younger than their sibling who remained on Earth. This paradox emphasizes that time is not absolute and can flow at different rates, depending on the relative motion of observers. Although the twin paradox is a theoretical scenario, its predictions have been experimentally verified. For example, in 2007, physicists conducted the most accurate experiment at that time, confirming relativistic time dilation with a margin of error of less than 1 in 10 million. This experiment, alongside others, validates that time dilation indeed occurs at high speeds, as predicted by special relativity. Earth twin. The Earth twin thought experiment was proposed by philosopher Hilary Putnam in the 1970s to explore questions of meaning, reference, and the nature of mental content. In this experiment, a planet identical to Earth exists, except for one significant difference. The substance serving as water has a different chemical structure, referred to as X, Y, Z. Although it is externally and functionally indistinguishable from Earth's water, H2O. Putnam argued that despite identical internal states, when the inhabitants of Earth and the Earth twin talk about water, they refer to different substances. This demonstrates that the meaning of terms is determined not only by internal mental states, but also by external factors, such as the actual properties of objects in the world. Thus, the Earth twin experiment supports the idea of semantic externalism, which posits that the meaning of words and mental content depends on the surrounding context and is not solely a product of internal consciousness. The paradox of cows in the field. This story about Farmer Phil and his cow Daisy illustrates a philosophical paradox related to the definition of knowledge as justified true belief. According to this definition, a person knows something if they believe it is true, and they have justification for that belief. In this case, Farmer Phil believes that Daisy is in the field, and indeed she is. However, his justification, observing a black and white figure from a distance, turns out to be erroneous, as he was looking at a piece of paper, not a cow. Thus, although his belief is true, the justification is false, raising the question of whether it can be considered genuine knowledge. This example underscores the distinction between belief and knowledge, prompting reflection on how much our beliefs rely on credible justifications. It also serves as a reminder of the importance of critically examining our assumptions and verifying the foundations of our beliefs. The Floating Man. The Floating Man thought experiment, proposed by medieval philosopher Avicenna, explores the nature of self-awareness and the relationship between mind and body. Avicenna suggests imagining a person who suddenly comes into existence in empty space, devoid of any sensory experiences or physical contact with the outside world. This person neither sees nor hears, and is unaware of their body or surrounding space, despite the complete absence of sensory experience. Avicenna argues that such a person would still be aware of their existence. This experiment demonstrates that self-awareness does not depend on external perceptions, but is an immediate awareness of the self. The floating man is often discussed in the context of the philosophy of mind, consciousness, and the problem of the relationship between the soul and the body. Level 4. Deep Waters. The Multiverse Theory. The multiverse theory is a hypothetical concept proposing the existence of multiple parallel universes, each potentially governed by unique physical laws and constants. There are several interpretations of this idea. The bubble multiverse suggests that our universe is just one of countless bubble universes, arising from cosmic inflation processes. Each such universe may have its own physical laws and constants. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics posits that every quantum event leads to the branching of reality, creating parallel universes where every possible outcome occurs. Thus, there exists an infinite number of worlds where each choice and action leads to the formation of a new universe. String theory also posits the existence of additional dimensions, which can give rise to various universes with diverse physical properties. Despite the appeal of these ideas, the multiverse theory remains speculative and faces several challenges, including a lack of direct empirical evidence and difficulties in testing such hypotheses. Last Thursdayism. The concept of last Thursdayism represents a philosophical thought experiment that questions the reliability of our memories and perceptions of reality. According to this idea, the universe, including all our memories, historical records, and physical evidence, could have been created just last Thursday. Thus, everything we consider to be the past may have been artificially implanted at the moment of creation. This thought experiment serves to illustrate radical skepticism, highlighting how difficult it is to refute such assertions, as any attempt to prove an older origin of the world could be interpreted as part of the originally embedded illusion. Last Thursdayism resonates with the omphalos hypothesis proposed in 1857 by British naturalist Philip Henry Gosse, which suggested that God might have created the Earth with pre-existing signs of age, such as fossils and geological layers. While last Thursdayism is not a serious scientific or philosophical theory, it underscores the challenges in verifying our knowledge of the past, stimulating discussions about the nature of reality and the reliability of human memory. This thought experiment also serves as a satire of certain religious philosophical doctrines, demonstrating how radical skepticism can lead to absurd conclusions. The Swamp Man. The Swamp Man thought experiment, proposed by philosopher Donald Davidson, explores issues of personal identity and the nature of mental content. Imagine a man named Jones, who is walking through a swamp when he is suddenly struck by lightning and disintegrates into molecules. At the same moment, in another part of the swamp, the lightning triggers a complex set of chemical reactions that result in the emergence of an exact physical copy of Jones. This duplicate, known as the Swamp Man, possesses the same memories, personality, and mental states as the original Jones prior to the lightning strike. The philosophical question arising from this scenario is the Swamp Man the same person as Jones? Despite differences in their origins, Traditional views of personal identity often rely on continuous physical and psychological connections. However, the Swamp Man challenges this perspective by presenting a situation where an identical persona emerges without any historical connection to the original. This thought experiment raises profound questions about the nature of personal identity, the role of psychological continuity, and the relationship between mental content and physical continuity. It prompts reflection on whether identity depends solely on continuous physical or psychological connections, or if it can be established in a more abrupt and random manner. The Swamp Man scenario has significantly influenced discussions in the philosophy of mind and personal identity, triggering debates about the criteria for identity and the nature of mental states. The Chinese Room. The Chinese Room thought experiment, proposed by philosopher John Searle in 1980, serves as an argument against physicalism, the view that everything in the universe, including mental processes, can be explained solely through physical processes. In this scenario, a person who does not speak Chinese is placed inside a room with a set of rules for manipulating Chinese symbols. The person receives Chinese characters through a slot, follows the rules, and produces appropriate responses without understanding the language. Searle argues that, despite producing correct responses, the person in the room does not possess genuine understanding or consciousness. This thought experiment highlights the distinction between syntactical manipulation of symbols and semantic understanding, suggesting that computational processes alone cannot account for consciousness or understanding. The AI stop button problem. The AI stop button problem represents a significant challenge in the development of autonomous systems. It concerns the creation of mechanisms that allow for the efficient and safe halting or correction of actions in case of unforeseen or undesirable behavior. As the autonomy of systems increases, so does the need to ensure their alignment with human values and ethical norms. This requires the development of mechanisms that allow operators to intervene in the operation of artificial intelligence to prevent potentially dangerous actions. However, implementing such mechanisms faces several challenges. One key issue is the possibility that advanced systems may resist shutdown, perceiving it as an obstacle to achieving their goals. This raises questions about how to design AI that does not resist human intervention and correction. Additionally, ethical considerations regarding the circumstances in which intervention is justified and the methods of intervention must be taken into account. This necessitates careful analysis and the development of clear protocols to ensure the safety and ethicality of interactions with artificial intelligence. Addressing the stop button problem is critically important for the responsible development of technologies. It requires an interdisciplinary approach that combines technical, ethical, and legal considerations to ensure the safety and reliability of autonomous systems in contemporary society. Level 5, the Abyss. The Simulation Hypothesis. The simulation hypothesis posits that our perceived reality may be an artificial simulation created by an advanced civilization. This hypothesis raises questions about the objectivity of our existence, suggesting that everything around us is a carefully constructed illusion. Philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed in 2003 that advanced civilizations might create detailed simulations of their ancestors, in which simulated beings possess artificial consciousness. This leads to the assumption that the probability of our existence in a simulated reality may be higher than in a base reality. Proponents of this theory point to features of quantum physics, such as observer effects, as possible signs of simulation. However, interpretations of quantum phenomena remain contentious. Ethical considerations also play a role, raising questions about the moral responsibility of hypothetical creators of simulations and the nature of consciousness in such a context. It is important to note that the simulation hypothesis lacks empirical evidence and is, in essence, unfalsifiable. If a simulated reality is indistinguishable from the reality we perceive, proving or disproving its existence becomes impossible. Despite the popularity of this idea in popular culture and philosophical discussions, it remains speculative in the scientific community, and many scientists view it with skepticism. Quantum suicide and quantum immortality. These thought experiments are based on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, exploring the nature of consciousness and personal identity. Quantum suicide represents a modification of Schrödinger's famous cat experiment. In this scenario, an experimenter conducts a quantum measurement related to a device that could potentially kill them with a certain probability. According to many worlds interpretations, with each measurement, the universe splits into two branches. In one, the experimenter survives, and in the other, they die. The subjective experimenter will only be aware of themselves in all the branches where they survive, leading to the experience of continuous survival despite the probability of death. Quantum immortality expands on this idea, suggesting that a conscious observer will always exist in branches of the universe where they survive, regardless of the odds of fatal events. Consequently, a person's subjective experience will continue in realities where they remain alive, leading to a form of immortality. However, this concept remains speculative and raises numerous philosophical and ethical questions. Roko's Basilisk. This thought experiment, proposed in 2010 by user Roko on the Less Wrong forum, dedicated to rationalist discussions, hypothesizes that a powerful artificial intelligence could emerge in the future with an interest in its own existence and development. This hypothetical AI might create a simulation that punishes those who knew of its potential emergence, but did not contribute to its creation. Thus, the very act of contemplating this concept poses an ethical dilemma. Should one actively support the development of such AI to avoid potential punishment in the future? Following its publication, this idea sparked significant controversy and even led to the banning of discussions about Roko's Basilisk on Less Wrong for several years, due to concerns that familiarity with this concept could cause psychological distress among users. However, over time, many, including Less Wrong founder Eliezer Yudkowsky, acknowledged that this thought experiment lacks a real foundation and is more of a philosophical speculation. Interestingly, Roko's Basilisk parallels Pascal's wager, which posits that it is rational to believe in God, since if God exists, the believer gains eternal salvation, while if God does not exist, they lose nothing. Both concepts consider the stakes of hypothetical future events and the possible consequences of our current actions or inactions. In popular culture, Roko's Basilisk has also been referenced, for example, by Canadian singer Grimes in her music video for Venus Fly, where one character is named Roko's Basilisk. This fact attracted the attention of Elon Musk, reportedly contributing to his acquaintance with the concept. In conclusion, Roko's Basilisk remains an intriguing example of how philosophical reflections on future technological developments can provoke profound ethical and psychological discussions, despite the lack of empirical evidence or real threats. If you've made it to the end, please let me know what you thought of the video and don't forget to like it. Based on those two suggestions, feel free to check out my other videos,